And hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of our content today at Black Tech Fest. And I'm incredibly excited about this session. One, because I'm not going to do a lot of the talking. And that's because I'm here to listen as an ally, as a proud feminist, I would argue, and someone who's really passionate about diversity in our industry and in our spaces. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce two amazing women on this session today to talk a little bit about the topic of ultimately how do we get more great Black women into leadership positions. And when I was thinking about this topic, having had the conversation, I was like, let me go and ask some amazing people who are in this space. So that's where I begin. So first of all, I'm going to ask Honey just to give a quick introduction to herself, her background, her work, and then I'll come on to Sade.
Hello, my name is Honey Adjuan, and I lead the capital markets technology team at NatWest Group. But the capital markets technology team is actually facing in to NatWest Markets, which is the investment banking part of NatWest Group. It's quite interesting in terms of the role, because I didn't start out as a technologist. So I started out in banking on a graduate program focused on leveraged finance. And then from there, went into corporate finance, asset-based lending, and did a pivot into innovation. And from pivoting into innovation, here I am now in technology. So that's a real whistle stop of me, my background, and what I do.
And Sade, what about yourself?
Yes, so I am Sade Ayodele, and I am the head of global communications at Tidal. Similar to Honey, my path into tech was not linear. I actually started out in tech, and then I left the space to work on the agency side, doing PR and comms at various agencies in the sports and entertainment space. And then just recently, about a month and a half ago, I had the opportunity to come back into the tech space to lead comms for Tidal, which is still at the intersection of music and entertainment and technology. So I'm super excited to be back and to have this conversation with you all.
Amazing. And outside of that, I know you do a few other things, so we're going to shout about those in the call. But I'll come on to that, so don't worry, I haven't forgot it. But let's start off. Like, both of you are amazing women who have done amazing work and got yourself into some really important leadership positions. Tell us how, and then tell us ultimately, from this question, how do we help other people as well? I'll kick off and maybe ask Sade, because as you've mentioned, you've come kind of full circle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for me, one of the biggest key about getting women, Black women into leadership really focuses on having not just allies in the workspace, but really having strategic success partners, people that are speaking on your behalf when you're not in those rooms, and developing those relationships. I think it's good for everyone to have a mentor, but in addition to a mentor, because that person can be in your current ecosystem at work, or they could be externally. I think internally, in order to really go through your career and to continue to build in that way, it's really good and imperative actually to develop a relationship with someone in senior leadership, likely that may or may not look like you. If you are lucky, your company does have people that look like you at the most senior levels, but we all work in tech and know that that's not always the case. So I think it's important that you develop that and really find, I call them a sponsor. You need sponsorship in the tech space. You need someone that's going to advocate for you, take a chance on you, pick your name out of the hat, or often recommend you for different opportunities as you continue to go on and on.
And how do you find that? Because, as a guy sat here, I'm thinking, okay, I always want to be as helpful as I can. But, is it one that you go up and say to, a young woman on a graduate scheme, let me help you? Like, what is it that we should be doing? And you said about finding that. Okay, so, there's somebody here, myself, I'm in a leadership position. There's one thing to say, oh, there's a Black guy walking over there, they look a bit like me, maybe I should do something. How do you make that happen? What does sponsorship actually look like in reality?
That's a great question, because it's definitely easier than said. It's similar to a mentorship mentee relationship is developed over time. You can't go into any relationship just seeking to take from it. You need to be able to give something back. But on the flip side, I do believe, and I'm a very outspoken person, so it might be easier for me more so than someone who might be less that way. But setting up coffee chats, 15-minute meet and greets, things of that sort. If there's, if you have internal blog posts where people in leadership are pinning it, do you read those? Are you commenting on them? There's ways that you can start those conversations in a more organic way that's not like, hey, I need your sponsorship. Can we talk? There's a way to organically build those relationships, whether it's like, hi, John, I saw what you recently pinned to the company's letter. I thought X next point was so thoughtful. I would love to schedule 15 minutes with your assistant. Let me know who I can reach out with. I work in X department. Love to chat with you. So taking those steps, over 3-6 months, and it doesn't always have to be with one person. You can start to kind of do that across the company to find that person, or sometimes you'll hit gold and the first person you strike will take an interest in you. But it's really establishing those relationships and making your presence known at your company.
Honey, let me come on to you. How have you thought about sponsorship and the role that that's played in your career today? Tell us a bit about whether is that how it always is? Is that a myth? Is it possible without it? Tell us.
I always find it very interesting when we talk about sponsorship because my career hasn't been one of mentoring or sponsorship. If I was asked to describe it, it's sheer bloody mindedness. A lot of the time it's been because I have had to basically try and be the best at what it is I could possibly be, and always trying to be really, really good across so many different categories. But I would say that the negative in that is it is a more arduous step and it takes longer. And I think sponsorship is fantastic because I think that is almost like a level set for everyone. So if you're seeking sponsorship, you now know that your sponsor is there able to advocate for you when you're not in the room. It also means you don't have to be as bloody-minded, and it means you get less frustrated. And it also means that you get to focus on the things that you're good at, as opposed to having to have so many strings to your bow because you never know which particular string you're going to have to pluck or use. So for me, my career has been one where when there's a block, I then move somewhere else. When there's another block, it's almost like this kind of like Tetris game in terms of moving where I see opportunity and ensuring that I get the skills so I'm able to leverage where I think the market might be moving. I do think that if I did have a sponsor in the early part of my career, my journey would have been quicker and it would have been easier. So I do think sponsorship is that joker in the card, and it's really, really important.
There's two things I want to reflect on because honey, you mentioned that you started as a graduate, if I'm not mistaken. So you've done a lot of that movement within an organisation. Where Sade, as you've mentioned, you're relatively new in role, and you've been working in a few other organisations to kind of chart that path. Both of different approaches, different things. Do you think there are merits to one or the other? Do you think that you have to be more bloody minded, as you said, because you're in the same organisation? Or do you think it helps because actually you know these people, you know whose doors you need to knock on? Like, do you need to leave as a Black woman to take that step up because of the barriers that exist?
Well, I had to actually leave. I've never been in one organisation for a long time. The organisation I'm at now has been the longest I've ever worked for an organisation. Every time there was a barrier, there was a blockage, particularly when it came to promotion, I moved company. The only way I've been able to navigate my career to this point is by leaving for an organisation that was willing to actually take me on. So a lot of the time for me, I was already doing the role that I was supposed to be promoted into, but there were no opportunities within those organizations. So what I did was just start my CV, start looking for a role elsewhere at that level that I was supposed to be promoted into. So that's what I did. Now, the organization that I'm currently at, I came in at a certain level, which was quite senior. And then I spent time getting to know the organization and rotating sideways before I then got the opportunity to move upwards. But I didn't move upwards based on a sponsor or a mentor. I'd already been doing a similar role for about a year and a half at that level. So when this opportunity came along, I was able to just go in and go, well, I'm already doing this. This is how I do it. This is just going to be different terrain in which to do it in. And that was it, basically, from my perspective. I would rather Sade's way, because believe me, it is much more humanizing than having to hit your head against several brick walls.
Yes, so I was nodding the entire time because my path also was not linear. I have had sponsors in roles where I saw promotions, I saw, raises, but I've also been in organizations where I was beating my head against the wall and I just left. To your question, Ashley, there is not a one size fits all. But one thing that I want to make clear, and I feel very adamantly about, is that these corporations and corporate America in general was not built with us and people that look like us in mind. And so we are all playing a game that was not built for us. And so there are rules unwritten often that we have to play in order to get those places. And so sponsorship is an easy way to partner with someone who likely the rules were better written for in mind to make those necessary steps. And again, I'm in a completely new organization and I'm super happy, but in my previous role, I did have those sponsors. And I do believe even if I had chosen to stay there, that I could have gotten to those realms. I did believe leadership was invested in me. And that is why I became so passionate, because I realized once I did form those relationships, which took time, that they were assisting me in things and passion points internally and even externally. The nonprofit that I had started, the advocacy group last summer, in the wake of the racial awakening that we had in the U.S. and around the globe, I started Hold the Press, which was really aiming to help diversify the PR and comms industry, which is 89% white. That was something I was doing outside of work, but my leadership at my job at the time took an interest and was willing to make donations, willing to make introductions, so that I was getting in the right rooms to have the right conversations to make the necessary change. If I hadn't had that sponsorship with him, even externally, for my interests, that would have been a much harder path to chart. And so I still have a relationship with those people in leadership, even though I'm no longer with that company. And that's why I continue to believe full-heartedly that sponsorship is a way that I've seen, at least again, in these corporations and these settings that weren't necessarily built with us in mind, the best way to continue to move forward if that is something you choose to do.
So let's hold men to account here, yeah, because we talk about the system being built in different ways, and the system, believe it, isn't, it's not perfect for me, but it's definitely probably easier for me than it is for the Black woman. I was looking at some statistics, and especially if we take older Black women as well, I think 74% of Black women who are aged over 45 basically do not feel safe speaking up at work. Like, most men take that for a given. Do you know what I mean? Most men can walk into a room and never feel like they don't have a place to talk up. And don't get me wrong, like, the stats still say if you're a Black man, you feel less and less and less depending on where you are and what your intersectionality is about that. But what do us as men need to be doing in order to create some of these spaces and to create a sense of safety and for Black women? Because I could go into tell me about some of the challenges, so to speak, but I can't. I've been here, I've been doing this long, I've been listening, and I hope our other audience have been listening today. But I really want to say, what do I, as a man, what do men need to be doing in this instance? Because I think sponsorship is definitely one thing, but what more can we be doing as well? Maybe I'll throw this one over to Sade.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I think when you look at the hierarchy, if you will, that often occurs in corporate America, I would say for white men, when you are sponsoring or when you're looking down at the next leaders, make sure you're not just looking at white men or Black men or Asian men, because there is, there's intersectionality, right? So you're just more inclined to help someone that looks like you, that you resonate with, that has a similar background, etc., which often leaves Black women out of that conversation, because again, not only is there not oftentimes Black people in leadership, there's not a lot of women in leadership. So it's just looking at that duality and making sure that you're looking below and across for people that are displaying talent and can really help change the organization, that can bring diversity of thought, that can bring diversity of thinking to the table, and making sure that you're including them in those efforts.
And Honey, what are some of your reflections on that? What do men need to be doing?
I think amplifying the voices of women in the workplace. I think a lot of the time, and I've just what's quite interesting is that I just came off a call with a peer that I work with, explaining the fact that there's sometimes I get particularly frustrated because the words coming out of my own mouth don't seem to be heard unless they're coming out of the mouth of a man, or a man who's white. And I think a lot of the things that men in the workplace can do is to actually boost the credibility of the Black women working with them, in terms of reinforcing what you're saying and then attributing the assent to you. I think that's a really, really big thing. I think also men could also be sensitive to the challenges and the nuances when you're in a room in terms of the vibes, and understanding that there's some challenges that are going to be unique to women or Black women, and looking to ensure that if they're going to judge a scenario or an issue, they're doing it with a broader framework. So I think that's really, really important, because a lot of the time, Black women that I know in senior positions, they have that additional pressure of being very visible and invisible. So you're very visible in the fact that, oh, we've got diversity of Black women here. But when you start proffering your thoughts, you're proffering your ideas, all of a sudden no one can hear your voice. So I just think men being very clear as to what a lot of us Black women have to navigate and being sensitive to that, I think is really, really important. And that's amplification as well.
So here's a question: what about the white woman? Because I was reading something from Lean and McKinsey in the Wall Street Journal, and actually there was a report from a lot of research that was done that basically said that 80% of white women feel that they're allies to people of color and Black women in the workplace. But when it came down to it, less than half of them said that they actively confronted racial discrimination in the workplace, and less than a quarter of them said that they were actively advocating for opportunities for Black women in the workplace. So I think if those are some of the lessons for men, what can white women be doing as well? Maybe I'll throw this over to Honey.
This is an interesting one. The reason is because there's always this expectation that because we are women, that our experience will be quite similar and that there will be solidarity. But what I always try to make clear to people is that there's a specificity in the experience of Black women, which is why we have misogynoir as a concept, which is separate from misogyny. I think what sometimes we forget is that there is the duality of the politics, or the fact that, there's only this part of the pie that is going to be made available for women. And then everyone is scrambling over that pie or those crumbs. And a lot of the time, I think white women who believe they are allies may not see that intersectionality between your race and your gender. And there's an expectation that when there's something that is not particularly supportive of women, we all stand together. However, when there's something to do specifically with your experience at your intersection as a Black woman, then come the questions. Did you really mean that? Are you sure? And sometimes I try to frame it and go, well, if someone said that to you based on your experience and it's based on you being female, you wouldn't like that. So why would it be just because I have an additional characteristic, you are not able to empathize? I think a lot of the time as well, the society in which we live in creates an environment where there's competition, not only for resources, but in terms of gender politics, in terms of, all the other things. And it doesn't always lend itself to getting that real allyship, not just by saying I'm an ally, but the action of allyship. So a lot of the time, I just think, like the same thing for men, it's about empathy. It's about understanding the fact that your reality as a white person or as a white woman is likely not very similar to that of a Black woman, and making space for us to also put forward our thoughts and really not come to me after the fact to tell me you support me, but support me right there and advocate for me in the meeting. So those are a number of things that I think a lot of white women could actually, think about.
Yeah. And Sade, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually want to add to that because Honey said something that reminded me of a conversation I had a couple weeks ago with a friend who's also Black and in leadership in the tech space. And the word ally is very passive, right? Everyone loves to be like, I'm an ally. But like, what does that mean? And we talked about how we would love to get into a place of where people, instead of calling them allies, you call yourself a success partner, because it puts the action on you, like how you partner to make this person successful, versus ally. Because when you say you're an ally, it's like, oh, someone said something off-colored in a room towards Asians or Blacks. Do I speak up? So if you spoke up, you're an ally. Or if you didn't make the comment, then that also makes you an ally. Like, it's just very passive. Whereas when you frame it as a success partner, it really puts the onus on non-Black people, whether it's a white person, Hispanic, whatever it is, to actively seek out opportunities to set Black people up for success. So when it comes to white women in the workplace, my kind of question to them is like, are you a success partner? Are you more than just an ally? Are you a success partner? What have you done in the last 6 months that set up someone that doesn't look like you for success? Was it recommending them to lead a project? Was it, making sure their voices were heard? Was it giving constructive feedback, but maybe not in a public setting like you might do for someone else? So really, what are you doing as a partner, a success partner, to ensure that your colleagues that are Black women or even Black men in those spaces are being set up for success?
Got it. We've only got a couple minutes left. So I'm going to ask just both Sade and Honey to be slightly brief, although that's not my intention, because this conversation could go on for ages and I'm just loving it because I'm listening and learning. But, are you more optimistic of the opportunities for Black women to be in leadership in the next 10 years than, say, the past 10 years? And I know I need to keep it short, but, I'd love to get, a couple of sentences just in your mind about where your views are on that. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Is nothing changing? And please, let's call it out if that's the truth, because we need to be honest, yeah? And if there is stuff changing, then you call it out as well. But anyway, I'll pass that over to Honey and then on to Sade to conclude.
Yes. When Sade was talking about the fact that the racial awakening last year, now, for instance, I think a lot of us were already awakened, but we're on the bus waiting for other people to get on the bus with us. And it took such a tragedy for people to actually go, yes, we need to do something. And I am hoping that lasts for a long time. But off the back of that, in my organization, I founded, and I am global co-chair of the Black Professionals Network with another Black woman and a Black man too. What is quite interesting is I am hopeful for the future. However, my hope is still limited because there's still a requirement, particularly for Black women, to be exceptional for those opportunities. So the way in which you can just be you as a person who's not Black or a person who specifically is white, where you can come in and expect that the world will be fair to you. It's not always the way with Black people. And what I see is we are going to get more Black women, yes, but they're going to have to be one of those hardy, special, resilient women to actually get to that point. And then hopefully after that decade, maybe there'll be an opportunity for people, Black people and Black women in particular, to be who they are and still be able to get those opportunities for senior leadership roles. So positive, but caveated.
Got it. And Sade, I'll ask you to be brief, but just get your thoughts because I want to make a few plugs as well. We've got to wrap up shortly.
Yeah, no. Similarly, I'm positive, cautious, but cautiously optimistic is what I am. Similar to Honey, I think we've seen change, especially in the last year and a half with everything that happened in 2020. I think that change will continue. It'll be at a pace probably not to any of our satisfaction, but I think it's trending positively, which is something I'm excited about. And I think honestly that there's no longer a choice. I feel like I'll speak for y'all. I think we're all millennials here, but Gen Z that's coming up after us, they're not having it. So good luck to those who think that they can keep the status quo. I do not think the status quo will continue any longer.
Amazing. What a way to conclude. Sade, I just want to, you do amazing things as well. Give us a plug about what they are and where to find us. You got 30 seconds. Oh, are you on mute?
All right. So hold the press, hold the underscore. You got me?
No, I can hear you. It's my internet. Go.
I would say you can find out more about the work that I'm doing at holdthe_press.com. It's hold_the_press at all of our social platforms. And similarly, 600 and Rising, 600andrising.com, same across all platforms. And you can add me on LinkedIn from all of the marketing materials that the Black Tech Fest is putting out. So
amazing. So with that, I just want to say a big thank you so much to Honey and Sade. Could you imagine we were even meant to, this panel was meant to be bigger than the same amount of time we've had. Can you imagine? But yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you. Again, such an important conversation. I've definitely learned. I think things are trending in a direction, but men, women, we all need to do a lot more to accelerate the pathways for Black women to get into leadership. And please do hold yourselves to account and connect with Honey and Sade, and hopefully find out more about how to do that too. So with that, have a great afternoon or morning or wherever you are streaming this from. Do check out the rest of the content on blacktechfest.com as well, and on the platform. And I hope everyone's enjoyed the session today.